And we're live, yay. Okay, hello anybody out there watching. Welcome to Down Under and Land Down Under Hangouts. Tonight we're talking about Record of a Spaceborn Shoe. Please hold up the book. Yes, hello.
Here is a copy of this book.
Beautiful book. It's gorgeous cover. I like the US one so much more than sorry, the UK one so much more than the US one.
I love this cover.
Yeah, they're beautiful covers. So tonight we're going to be oh God, sorry guys, I'm apologizing in advance. My brain is broken. Feel free to take over at any time. Who would like to start off and give their opinion, general opinions? Kim, do you want to go?
All right. I didn't really read what it was, or coming off of the other two. I just finished A Close and Common Orbit, which everybody did way before me. I didn't know what it was about, but I think the title was pretty accurate. So when I started reading it, I didn't know where it was going to go at all. I actually really enjoyed it, the way it was set out, where it was just a story about a whole lot of different people and just the way they lived. I found it quite fascinating. And yeah, enjoyed it. We'll get into the rest later, I suppose.
Awesome. Kirsten?
Yeah, same. I really enjoyed it as well. And again, I didn't know sort of where this would be going. I sort of was a little bit hoping we'd go back to the characters from the first book, but apart from that, I really, really enjoyed it. Like I got through it in 2 days, and it wasn't a stretch to try and make myself get through it in 2 days to get it done in time. So it was a nice, quick, easy read. And I didn't like it as much as the first two, but only by a little bit. So
yeah, awesome. Naomi?
I enjoyed it. It took me a bit to get into, like, because I was listening to it as an audiobook. I found that it was just a bit slow to begin with. Like, I don't know if I just started reading it when I wasn't in the mood to read that particular book, but I found it took a bit more time to get into than the last two.
Karina?
Similar. I'm wondering if it's because I listened to it as an audiobook as well. We didn't want to buy it because we didn't want the trade paperback size because it won't match the set, and we couldn't get it by.
Is it just me or did they drop out?
They just dropped out.
Everyone else out there, Chris. So we got the audiobook just because we've had limited choice, and obviously I didn't listen to the other two. I read them. And so I'm wondering if that's what's colouring how I felt about it. But overall, yeah, I didn't quite enjoy it as much as I did the other two books. Whether I want to say maybe it's because, I don't know, that thought went nowhere. I just didn't gel with these characters as much as characters in the other two books. I don't know what it was. I still gave it 4 stars, but it took me a lot longer to connect with the characters in this book than the other two.
Yeah. Elizabeth?
I actually enjoyed it the most out of the ones that I've read so far. I really liked the aspects about community and that sort of thematic exploration. So I'd read New York 2140 by Kim Stanley Robinson last year for the Hugo Awards.
Yep.
And I felt like it was exploring some of the same themes, but with much better characterization.
If nothing else, she does that very well.
yeah, she does.
Yeah. Sarah?
I'm muting myself. I loved this book. I didn't know what any of it was about before I went into it. I knew that the second book was about the AI, and you'll know I had some issues with that idea of AIs requiring bodies. And I do get, and this is kind of just to kind of preface it, that I do get the crew of the first book confused with the crew on the Paradox trilogy. Because they're both, you know, I don't know if you guys remember that, like Heaven's Queen and all those ones.
Oh, yes.
So I get the crews confused, and I'm like, who's the one with the feathers? And there's nobody with feathers, or you know, like, or who's the, like, I get them confused. So that's partially the problem. But I loved this because, and it's really funny, Elizabeth, that you mentioned Kim Stanley Robinson, because I tried to read the Mars trilogy and couldn't get into it because it was exploring the ideas of how you set up a society, but was lacking characterization. So that he still hasn't done that particularly, as like maybe not as well 30, 40 years on, is really interesting, because I was interested in reading the New York book 2040, whatever it's called. I love this book. I'll get into all the reasons why. I think a lot of it are things that I think about culturally in society, and I think there was a lot that came up in the first book, especially around the Exodans and how they became a race that was one culture instead of disparate ones. And it was just really, I love this. I love what the themes it explored.
Good stuff. I struggled as well a little bit to get into it, and I must admit that when Tessa got the letter from Ashby, I was just like, oh, thank God, connections.
Right.
Made a massive difference to me as soon as I read that letter, and I was just like, okay, we've got some connections here, we can do this. But yeah, I struggled up until I started to see some connections between the people. I was a bit, I don't mind separate stories, but they were so short, the little sections, that I got a little frustrated with that at first. But once you sort of had enough of that, I was like, I love these people so much. So I was all 3 stars until about halfway, and then I was like, by the end I was like 4 stars, 100% solid 4 stars. So all good. All right. Anybody got some talk points they want to bring up first up? I have notes, but anybody else want to go first?
I have a quick question that I was thinking about at the end of it. Every character is intertwined except Tessa, right? She's the only one whose story is separate to everyone else's.
I don't think it's separate so much as it's separate as that she has no physical contact with anybody else.
Yeah.
But she is influenced by the same events that have affected everybody else, in that it affected her decision to leave at the end.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. I think it was just, I suppose, my only issue with it was I loved how just gently the other stories intertwined. Like, it wasn't brute force, it was just gentle. And maybe, like you said, that was the gentle interaction. But I just thought that it could have been a little bit more. But, that was just a quick question from me. Yeah. I thought maybe I'd missed something, but I wasn't sure.
Well, let's talk about the story structure first a little bit anyway, because I agree. I liked the gentle interaction. I didn't need them to be enmeshed with each other or even get to know each other. I think I just would have liked a little more interaction, something to indicate that we were going to get some interaction a little earlier on.
Yes, because it happened very late in the piece.
Yeah, it was over halfway before really the whole thing started to...
Yeah, it was 2/3.
Yeah, and it was more, and I didn't mind that it was just you guys know me, I love characters and just getting to know characters and that, but I just couldn't see where the plot was, and I was looking for it.
Yeah, it was more of an exploration of a theme than it was a story with one plot, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
I guess that's why I didn't have so much of a problem with it, because I thought that the theme, the major theme, and then the minor threads that came out from that, I really enjoyed exploring. And I was actually getting sad once it sort of, I was like, I'd be happy to explore the lives of so many more people in the fleet and what they do and what their lives are like. I loved it.
Yeah.
And how they make life work and the traditions that they have created for themselves, which I found really beautiful. So yeah, I want to be with Ashby and the crew again, right? But I also feel there's so many more stories that could be told. It's just, and I don't know, is she planning to tell more stories within this universe?
I think this might have been the last one she was planning to do, but I will double check if there's anything scheduled on according to Goodreads anyway.
We know sometimes that changes.
Yes,
yeah.
There's that
Wouldn't be sad if it did.
There's nothing currently scheduled according to Goodreads, and she stopped tweeting. Sorry, Elizabeth?
Is there a collaboration coming up? One of the book serials type things, I've forgotten what it's called. They did the Tremontaine you know, Swords Point by Eleanor Cushing.
Oh,
Yes, yes.
And then they did like a series that expanded on that as a series that released in installments.
Yep.
She's working on one at the moment with a bunch of other amazing authors. I'm trying to remember who it is. It might be like Yoon Ha Lee and.
Oh God. It's just like, oh my God, you're talking to all the people I need.
I'll see if I can find what that was.
Well, the interesting thing is the last note I wrote on my notes was like, I thought I'd already learnt this lesson, but just trust Becky Chambers and read the damn book because she's so good every time. And it's like, don't worry if it doesn't sit right with you or something's wrong. It doesn't matter. It's going to be good. Just read the damn book. I felt like that was definitely the case.
yeah.
I did think with the structure a little bit, I might have enjoyed it a little bit more if she literally just told each of the stories like short stories and you just got the overlapping elements when you got to the end of the stories. But that was me. I'm not sure that would have worked for everybody else.
I don't know whether it would have worked for those couple of big events that happened that kind of got, like, in particular, the Sawyer, like, once you kind of heard about his death in one of the things, it wouldn't have had the same impact as the others.
True.
I don't know. That's
I think
just me.
Yeah. I think with this particular book, I didn't mind it. There are other books that I prefer it just because I start to enjoy one story more than the others. And when it switches to the others, I just want to hurry through it and get back to that other story. With this one, I didn't feel that so much. I was happy just to keep chopping and changing between them. But I know that feeling where you just wish they'd stick with this one character and do that story and then go with another character and do that story. But for this one, I didn't mind it.
Yeah.
So I felt that way with Kip for this story. But I think that might be my problem with teenagers after having taught them for so long.
But I think the switching between stories is like really important to the theme of community because you're looking at like how these people are separate but also interact.
That's true.
Yeah, community. Just to go back to what I was saying before, the book, the series that Becky Chambers is working on is called The Vila, and she's working on it with Yoon Ha Lee, River Solomon, and S.L. Huang.
Holy crap! Like, just seriously,
Amazing,
tick all of my favorite authors right now.
Yeah.
River Solomon, my God.
Yeah, so that's from Serial Box. I'm not sure when it's coming out. Doesn't say just yet, but it's on the way soon. And it's a sci-fi.
Nice.
Awesome. Something to keep our eyes out for.
Should be epic.
All right. Did we want to talk about any of the main characters?
I want to talk about all of it, but I don't want to dominate the conversation. What were your notes? Because you're always very good with this. I've selected pieces to talk through as well. But Mel, you're always so organised.
Yeah, right. If you saw my notes, you'd be like, "Oh, Melanie, you disappoint me so bad."
There's notes. You're one step ahead of things, right?
It was desperation. I was like, I need to make sure we've got something to talk about. Okay, well, let's start off with Sawyer because he has the shortest story, really, and he is really one of the linchpins of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think it was actually devastating because he was the only one who was in that circumstance where he was coming in and trying to start a new life and all of that sort of thing. And I was just like, no, what? Like anybody else, I would not have been quite so personally torn over. But this poor dude was so lonely and had such an awful life, and she killed him.
She did a George R.R. Martin on him. And I actually said at the end of the chapter, I was like, "You didn't." Oh my God, you did! You know?
Yeah, because I was like, no, he's going to wake up. He's not actually going to be dead.
I was like,
and then I was like,
the other ship's going to rescue him and all that. And then when they were actually talking, I was like, holy shit, oh my God, she did kill him off.
And I think part of my disappointment wasn't just for him himself, but it was also because when he got on that crew with those salvage people, I was like, oh, he's going to find his family. He's going to find, he's going to get along with these people, and no.
Really? That was not my reaction. My reaction was, this guy is an idiot and he is like, he's going to end up arrested or dead.
because I kind of was like, oh, maybe it'll be like Firefly, where like they're kind of doing the illegal salvage shit, but they're kind of really like kind-hearted criminals, and like, I was like, yeah, I was
we already had that
hopeful for him
story.
because I'm always hopeful for characters, and then usually it gets
The
screwed
moment
over.
he got picked up outside the
Yeah.
job agency, I was like, oh, that kid dead.
I was like, that is
Dead.
obviously the place where they would prey on someone who has no ID.
That's
Mm.
right.
Yeah.
Bad
The moment
I'm
they were
obviously
like,
naive.
oh, so you're good at tech? We're looking for someone that's good at tech. Come with me.
Yeah.
It's like
I
that
agree.
whole Ursula, come on, just come into my palace.
Yes.
You know you want to. Come on.
I agree. I totally knew it was going down bad, but I did not for a second believe he was dead until he was dead. Like,
Yeah.
I
You
will
know.
admit, I did have a moment of, oh, okay. Well then.
Yeah, it was very sudden. There was no. It was a shock.
Yeah.
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 And I feel terrible that my space knowledge didn't even alert me to the fact that what he was doing was a bad idea. I was like,
No,
I knew that was a bad idea. I knew that was a bad idea to do that underwater just as much as it's a bad idea to do in space. But no, my brain didn't go there until it happened.
no, me
Yeah.
neither.
I had to reread it because I was like, was there a sign that it was and it had an issue, and I just missed it? Like I couldn't quite work it out. I had to reread and go, what happened? Oh, there was compressed. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
Matt Bailey has joined the call. Matt,
hi, Matt.
Hi.
what do you think of the
Mate.
book? It being so fresh in your mind and all.
I literally just finished it 30 seconds ago.
And how do you feel?
Like, I enjoyed it, but it's my least favorite of the three.
Aha.
Yes.
See, Elizabeth's on the totally different side. She thinks that it's the best of the three.
The
Well,
main
I enjoyed it best.
Yeah, I don't think that necessarily I'm the same as Elizabeth. I enjoyed this the most, but it's also because I don't feel like this is a story that gets told particularly often. We're always on ships doing exciting things in sci-fi. We're never with the people who are making the move or the spaces, as it were.
Well,
Maybe
I
a
think-
little bit with what's the show that we watched and the books that got read with the
The
Martian? The Expanse. Thank you. The Expanse. Yeah, maybe a little bit with them.
It reminded me a lot of The Expanse, actually, because I had to keep reminding myself that it wasn't The Expanse. I had to keep going, oh, yeah, no, it wasn't that. Like, it was very similar to that kind of world. I think the kind of going into the realities of what living in space would be like, and all the stuff about, like how careful they are with checking stuff, and, like, it reminded me of the Belters in The Expanse. Like, the way that they kind of looked after each other and were very sort of serious about like checking if there was leaks and checking your suit and all that kind of crap.
I felt the problem with Sawyer was that she didn't really make us care about Sawyer until Sawyer was dead.
Oh, God, no, I liked him a lot.
I cared.
Yeah,
He was
I
my
really
favourite from the beginning.
I feel like she made him so much more important because he was important to other characters. Like, I enjoyed his story and I liked him as a character, but I feel like once he was dead, he became this, like, icon for other characters.
Symbol, yeah.
Yeah,
I
definitely agree on that.
I know what you said. The thing that is a little disbelieving about Sawyer is that considering the tough life that he had and like what he had to do, that he was so naive when he got on the fleet.
Oh, God, yeah.
Like that whole thing, like he wouldn't have been that naive if really having been planet side, having had to rustle jobs up and,
Having no parents from what was
having
it, age 6?
exactly, he should have been able to sniff out dodgy dealings from a mile
Yeah,
off.
like,
Right.
surely
So
on
that
his
didn't add
time
up.
on planet, he
Yeah.
would have had enough people trying to get him to do shifty work, or going to look for work and being like, you know what, I don't want to work for you, you seem shifty.
Yeah.
Maybe he had put into his head this idolized version of the fleet and kind of went, well, they won't be like the people that I knew on the planet, because he had this vision in his head of, this idealized version of what they were like, and
And he
that
did
they
say
looked after each
something
other
fell
and all
off
that.
and everything. Yeah, he did say that, but it seemed to happen too far down the line. Like I hear what Naomi's saying. Like I think the moment he sat down outside next to Oates, he would have, like, under normal circumstances, got a feeling. But I still, I'll forgive a certain amount of that because, I did enjoy his, like when he went and there was traditions that he experienced, and yes, he's the explainer, as it were, like the person we experience things through. But yeah.
The thing that really endeared him to me the most was when he went to the food place and they gave him the disgusting pickle burger and he was like, but I'm going to finish it because I don't want them to think bad of me.
Yep.
And so he forced himself to finish this horrible burger thing that he ordered. And I just really liked it. I really liked that he was so eager to kind of fit in this new place and because it felt really bad for him.
And
that was the place where, like, the old man, when he was there, was Grandpa for Tess, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I felt after he wrote the letter to, I don't know how to say her name, guys who had listened to the audiobook, Ice.
I thought it was
I was like right back to him. I was waiting for her to write back to him to create the connection or something.
Yeah.
And I just felt so terrible for him.
She never even mentioned, never really even mentioned the email. Even in all the sort of conversations that she had about him, during the up to his funeral sort of thing.
Oh no, she mentioned
it after he died. Yeah.
After he died, yeah.
Yeah, but she could tell the patrol the reason she could give him the email address is because she had it from the email she received.
Yes.
So that's how they managed to trace him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also a little disappointed in her. But at the same time, when he sent it, he was going on board. She didn't really have possibly the time to get back to him. Like, it was only 4 days before he went supernova. So maybe he just didn't get look, I've got what's on. I'll send him a note.
I'll get back from him later.
Hear back from him later when he gets back.
Didn't she say something about regretting that she hadn't done more or something?
Yes,
she had.
Yeah. Which is why she started the whole
the workshops of how to immigrate. Immigrate.
Which I'm sort of still a little bit shocked over that they didn't have it, given that they had the
too. I was like, really? Yeah, I was actually really surprised as well.
So many of the old people seemed like if you weren't from Fleet, you weren't Fleet. They didn't really want people coming in, but they also didn't want people leaving. And that's the problem. It's like, no, you've got young people leaving, so you want other young people to be coming in and replenishing those young people that are leaving. Otherwise, you are going to die out. It'll take a while, but it will happen.
Yeah.
You want to have facilities there so that younger people who want to come in can come in.
Yeah, which actually leads me to
scary. Sorry, Mel.
All right, it leads me to one of my other discussions. So I'm sorry, I was meant to keep us on the characters, but I'm going to go here because we're here, which is the whole factor of what was going on with the creds and what they were talking about, how that might disrupt their trading system, and that. I thought that was a really fascinating concept, and I'm not sure that there's a real solution to all of that. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think the solution is they're probably going to have to go full creds at some point. That from a commerce point of view, from a economics point of view, I think at some point they just have to instill a currency style economy. I think that you could keep, but because in my grand economic studies and stuff have found bartering works to a certain extent, but that's why currency was invented. It's why it took hold, is because bartering didn't work when you start introducing new cultures and new systems in, and it's just too hard for people to get grips with. And then what is something worth to somebody, right? There is no worth of those 3 bolts might be worth that to you, but they might be worth a hell of a lot more to somebody else. Whereas with a currency system, sorry, this is my economics, I can bang on about this, it's what something's worth, and it might ebb and flow in indication to what something what another currency is worth. But I have to say, the GC had one currency. I'm like, wow, Earth couldn't even do that. So guys, get on board. They've thought of it. if you're going to adopt anything, I know the AI is really exciting and everything, but the cred system's a good one. So,
Yeah, I definitely think that they're going to have to do something about it. That's for sure.
It'll be that whole thing, like they were talking about, the younger people are starting to change languages, and
yeah,
you know, it'd be one of those generational things that as the younger generation moves up, that those are the sorts of things that change, because the old people don't want to change.
Speaking of generations,
Yeah.
how many generations? I don't know if they said explicitly how many generations the fleet has been around.
9 or 10.
Yeah, definitely. They definitely mentioned more than 10.
Are we talking since launch, or because I'm talking about since they
Right.
got introduced to all the stuff from the GC?
Oh, from GC, I'm not sure. It might be 3 because there was.
I was going to say,
3 to 4.
Grandpa was talking about knowing about it when he was younger,
Yeah.
so it would be at least sort of 3 or 4-ish.
And Tamsin?
Yes.
Tamsin.
Yeah, Tamsin talked about seeing the news feed as a child, where she heard a Hamagen talking smack about humans. So she was 78 or so, I think. Wasn't that what they said? So if she was a child, maybe she was 4 or 5, it kind of gives you a feel. So it hadn't been quite 100 years. So not one full generation as yet.
Yep.
Which explains possibly why they haven't completely adopted things like language and monetary.
That first generation of people who experienced that introduction to that bigger world are still alive. So they're hangers-on to the real hangers-on to the older ways.
Yeah.
Probably accelerate change once they move on.
Got to say, though, credit to Becky Chambers for getting this much culture into 350 pages.
She did. She got a lot in.
I loved it. I loved it.
And you didn't feel like you were just reading culture studies or something.
I cried so much in this book. And I know I'm a crier, but there was just so much of the traditions that they had developed because they had done away with culture and religion, but knew that for a sensitive community, that traditions, and that pomp and ceremony is still required to make things important. I just thought it was so beautiful. There were so many things I loved about it.
Well, speaking of,
I love the murals.
I love the murals. I love the adopting of the name of the house as a
Yes, I love that too.
Great.
Yeah.
Especially for someone who's coming in who didn't have family, like for Sawyer. That was just like, beautiful moment.
I was just, I was very moved.
Speaking of traditions, shall we talk about Isabel?
Yeah.
I thought she was the best. I loved her. When she saved Kip, essentially, I was just like, you gorgeous girl, you gorgeous woman. And when Tamsin turned up and took her on and whisked her away. Yes, I was just like, oh, Tamsin, they're so cute and adorable.
Very cute. My favourite bit of their relationship was at the end when, at the naming ceremony that Kit was officiating over, where Tamsin was positioned herself next to the food, like an old woman, and then she's like, and Isabel's like, just make sure you get me some of that, and she's like, I was like, that is awesome. That is a relationship that I aspire to. I think it's awesome.
Exactly. It was definitely relationship goals.
Absolutely. And they were so sweet with one another. And when they went on the sundrift, or what's it called?
Sunset.
The sunset cruise.
Just like Sunset Cruise. Yeah, I can't remember now what it's called.
Less of a cruise and more of a
It was the equivalent of a roller coaster ride, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were like, go faster.
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
So funny. No, I loved. I enjoyed Isabel. I don't know if do I have a favourite? I'm not sure. I loved a lot about Tessa, but that's also because I'm a mum. So
yeah, and I found that the family stuff with the kids was so realistic. There's a few things that I was just killing myself laughing about. There's a bit where she says, when she comes home, she's like, I should just get a hat and put in some nouns and verbs and just pull them out of the hat and add them to one of my kids' names, and because that's what will be happening when I get home. And I'm like, that's my life.
Too real.
But Isabel, she's just the sage, right? Of the, and she's exactly the kind of elder that you want, in that she is always, like, she has traditions, but she's open-minded. And
Well,
that,
I thought it was fascinating how she thought the most important thing that they had was the archives, like that was the value of what the entire fleet was about. And I was just like, oh, you beautiful person, you.
Well, she made sense, because then she made a point. She was like, the rest of it, the water, the air, everything, that's surviving. What is living? And I don't know if that was quite the quote. I probably highlighted, but I was like, so you're convincing me, you're bringing me around. And, it's what the churches did for a long time, was recording people, because I think there's a sense of where people came from. And I think that's why with Sawyer, it affected her so deeply, because she sees this as a chance of, like, people are coming back to figure out where they've come from. They're not, but they're being treated as other. And I mean, you see that on Earth. You see people traveling to where they're, after generations of, I've done it myself, going over to the UK, wanting to see what their parents or their grandparents or their great-grandparents, where they came from, trying to find a connection.
Quick question. I'm not sure if any of you have read Wind Will Rove by Sarah Pinsker. It was a novelette, something like that. And that is also like set on a generation ship where the electronic archives were sabotaged.
Oh, wow.
And so now it's up, like, there's a tension now between, like, the older generations trying to preserve what they know, and the younger generations who are fighting to create new culture. So if that's like a theme that you really enjoy, you might want to check that one.
Yeah, I will. Add it to the chat, and I'll have a look at that. That's awesome. Yeah. Sorry, Mel.
Why are you apologising to me?
Because I love this book so much. I have so much, like, I want to gush over.
Nothing wrong with passion, Sarah. Nothing wrong with passion. All right. Well, we didn't talk about Tessa that much. We started, but should we go on with Tessa?
Does anyone have anything else to say about Isabel before,
Just before we go away from talking about just the Isabel and the importance of the archives, just at the very end with Kib having that, is it Kib? Kib. Sorry. Having that realization of, we don't have things that we can't touch. Our history. Oh,
yes.
Our history is our stories. Like, all of our all of our things that are old are things that we hand down, like the spacesuits and the plates. And if we can't use it anymore, we break it down to use something else. Like, that realization of the thing we keep and the thing we send, like the thing that is our continuation, is our stories. It's not anything physical. And that's such a human thing now, to want to keep things and have stuff. Going back, just even especially for sort of a lower socioeconomic people, when something broke, you used it to make something else, or you fixed it. You didn't keep something to have on the shelf. And it's just a really interesting way of looking at how people look at their history. Sorry, I know that was really off topic, but I feel
it's awesome. It's awesome.
No, it's a good
And
point.
The epilogue was so powerful when he's at the museum and it, like, gets told off for touching something.
Yeah.
That
And
really
so-
brings it home.
and it just didn't make any sense to him that you couldn't touch something, because in his world, everything is either something you use or something you, like, can be used. And if it can't be used, you fix it so it can be used, or you melt it down or break it down so that you can use it for something else. Like, it just boggled his mind that you would have things that just sit on the shelf, sitting on the shelf.
And like, if they want to record something that they used to use that they no longer did, they put it in the archives where it was just a digital file.
Like, they don't even keep stories on paper.
Yeah. And, it's so interesting, because I do think there's some cultural shifts around how much we consume in the first world, at least, around that. And I know there's a thing on Netflix at the moment
Tidying
where
Up by Mary
that one,
Carter.
yep, that woman, yep. And I have so many people watch that and they're just like completely like amazed by it. And I've had a period of time over the last couple of years where I've been living with essentially a capsule wardrobe, and you realize you don't need as much stuff. And also I want to make a recommendation if you are interested in these type of stories and things to think about, is the Articles of Interest podcast within the 99% Invisible podcast. They did a 6-episode series about articles of interest, which is about clothing. And the article of interest around blue jeans is fascinating because blue jeans were handed down and patched and handed down, and they got those distress marks so naturally, and now we actually chemically destroy cotton to make it like comfortable.
Or put holes in them beforehand.
Yeah, but we are destroying our waterways doing it. So anyway, I just can recommend it. It's just such a great thing to build on from this.
I was going to say, though, just going back a little bit to what Naomi started, which was, I must admit, as much as I appreciated the message that they had about the object in the museum, I was thoroughly horrified when he picked it up.
Oh, me too.
It was just an emotional reaction. I was like, what are you doing?
But that's because we have a culture of putting things in museums.
I know, and I do it because I have things. Like, I have teapots because I've got so many freaking teapots. And I've got teapots that are on my bookshelves that I don't touch except to dust them. And so I totally get it. I do it. But I'm also like, I totally get what they're saying, and it's a good thing. But, you know, I'm just also sort of like, so torn apart by it.
Yeah, and there's something that occurred to me today because I was patting my cat, is like there's no pets on board. They don't have a culture of having pets, which reminded me of the fact that pets are a very first world thing. That people in second world and third world, a country is becoming rich and affluent when they can start to afford pets, when they can have animals as companions and not perform a service. So cats not being ratters and dogs not being A, food, or B, guard dogs. You know, there's a purpose to every animal, and I think that's what you also see on this, is that they couldn't have companion animals. So I thought that was really, I was patting my cat going, oh, you wouldn't be on the fleet.
You'd be dinner.
Yeah. But they wouldn't have taken, like, did you notice, sorry, so many good themes in this. It's just such a great, like, economy world building. I love it. Like, there is nothing, everything that they eat is bugs or fish.
Yeah.
Do you notice that? Because they can farm that, and they could have stay-seed the egg spawn easily. So I totally understood why it was that. It was just so interesting. I was like, yep, I get that, because you can't have cows. And there was a funny bit where they were talking about the Martians, the cow lickers. Did you do that? Yeah, because the Martians have cows.
Yeah.
I did think that was one of the things that made me reminded me of The Expanse, because the food that they talked about was very similar to what they eat in the belt in The Expanse. Like there's a lot of bean curd things. There's a lot of like, they don't talk about insects as much, but there's a lot of soy and beans and like stuff made from like alginated things that have turned into like all of that kind of thing.
But was there any kudzu?
What was that again?
Kudzu. Nobody else other than Kim and I remember.
No, I
remember the kudzu.
Yeah, and the bobs, that's what they all ate.
Yes,
thank you. Okay.
And it's like, nobody's grown it. Come on.
Sorry, my brain was not in that world. And
yeah. Anyway, sorry, Mel.
No,
Stop apologizing.
because Mel's
It's Kudzu territory. Everyone's like, remembering the Kudzu.
Sarah, you know that if there was a problem, I would have pulled you in. Don't worry about it. All right. Tessa, let's go on with Tessa, guys, because if nothing else, I felt so bad for her daughter.
Yeah.
I was so upset when I first read that chapter, like that first chapter. I
think she died.
I thought something had happened to her. I was like, are you kidding me? You've maimed a child in the first chapter.
The
The
thing that
emotion,
killed
eh?
me was the mother was like, oh, it's her first time going on this thing by herself.
Yeah.
And she's big, and I'll go through the safety stuff with her, and like she's just stretching out this, you know, this thread and letting her go, and then something bad happens, and you're like, oh God.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought that the kid had died. I was like,
Yes,
like
yeah,
they're
me too.
screaming, and then I was like, oh God, that's it. And it wasn't until like when I saw her name come up later, I was like, oh, thank goodness she's still alive. But
so-
yeah, I liked that storyline a lot.
I did too.
Yeah, no, it was a really good one. What do you guys think about Tessa's decision to change where they lived for her daughter?
I didn't feel it was just for her daughter. I felt like it was for their entire family.
Mm.
I don't know if it's because I'm a planet sider that I could see the potential of her branching out and doing what Kip did, right? Like she spent her entire life there. It's like your husband works on a mining ship. He's branched out and tried something. You haven't as yet. And I don't know if that's just also because I was just thinking about this, like what Kip essentially is told to do by Isabel is what we call in New Zealand the Great OE, the Great Overseas Experience, which when she explains to him why she wants him to do it, that's exactly the narrative and a story that New Zealanders say is like, you cannot have perspective about the rest of the world until you go and live in it. We live right down in this tiny section of it, right? So I thought that was, I resonated with all of that. And that's why I did resonate with her trying something else, getting off world, testing out what she was, you know, wanting to do. Because also she'd lived in that hex her entire life. And I don't know how anyone does that, but I
think that's very true because I think she was very motivated by the fact that Ashby had left, and she felt like she didn't even entertain the idea of leaving because of Ashby, and like she had to make up for it. Yeah.
Also, it kind of brings a balance to the story because on one hand you've got someone who's really keen to come in and join the community here, and then you've got that balanced out with the story of this family who it's time for them to change and to move away from the community.
Yeah.
I also thought she was a balance for Kip in terms of Kip wanted so desperately to leave. And yes, he went and explored, but he happily came back and was ready to be part of the community.
Yeah.
Whereas she is kind of reluctant to go in the first place.
Yeah.
Though it ends up being a good decision for her and her family.
Oh God, I love those flash forwards at the end. I was just with her with the fruit and how happy they were with their new environment and everything. I was just like, oh.
And her daughter
and the girl.
Hanging out the bathroom window, looking up at the moon, saying, murmuring romantic things. I was like, yay. And I love that she was doing new things in a new way, and her husband was doing new things. He was, you know, like before you know it, he's going to be like the macaroon guy in Perth. You know, that's who came into my head. I was like, he's going to be that guy.
There you go.
You know, and it's great. I think, you know, they're being together. Like, I'm guessing they were in their late 30s to early 40s. And like, of course you want to try something else. You want to new. You want to evolve. So,
I sort of got the whole concept, like to me, the thing that really rang true with me was the whole, you're losing your job, you're going to have to retrain anyway.
Yeah.
Why not make a massive change all at once rather than just doing like little things? Just take the big step.
Yeah. And, you know, they'd had a hard time with the school and, you know, her dad, who I think in some ways, even though it wasn't there, I think she was staying for him.
Yeah.
Like, I think even though it was never said explicitly, I kind of read between the lines, which was her saying, Ashby left, I need to be responsible in the hex for my immediate family, you know? And he's saying, the hex is my family and I have lots of friends and we'll keep in touch and, you know, don't let me stop your life. You know?
Not just that, I feel like Grandpa flourished once she decided she needed to leave.
Good point. Good observation.
Like the moment she sort of said, I'm thinking about it, he's like, okay, that's fine. I've got a girlfriend. I've got the hex. And then the next
When got
time
his
they're
eye
talking-
surgery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at his eye. Yeah.
Girlfriend.
And I feel like he did that because he could see that she needed to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was also like, he's like, well, if I know she needs to evolve her life, I need to also then be a mirror of that. Like, I can't sit here and say I'm not going to go for the new tech, and I'm not going to try new things. Tell her, like, I can't tell her to go try new things if I'm not willing to.
Yeah.
So it was almost like he knew this conversation was coming, and from what the letters and everything, I think he kind of had sensed it was inevitable. I can never say inevitable.
But I think that was one of the beautiful themes of the whole story, which was how each of our own choices can affect and help others and motivate others to make their own choices too, and can help them to make good choices and stuff. So by holding back when really making a good choice for yourself can help another person make a good choice for themselves is a really positive thing. So.
Absolutely. And I really identified when Tessa was like writing all these letters to her husband, where she was basically like having a stress panic attack and just like basically offloading because she needed to. And I was like, yeah, that's what I do with my husband.
And then he turned up. And
then he turned
she's
up.
like, oh, it's all fine. And he's like, yeah, no, it's not. I can tell.
It's not. It's not. We, like, it's good to talk about it, but this is a talk that needs action. That felt very similar to my, like, it rang true of a relationship. Certainly of my relationship, I can't make comment on others. So.
No, I agree, because if nothing else, it was a really good moment for you to realize he was a good guy. Because I didn't think he was necessarily a bad guy, but I didn't think he was a very present guy. And it really just went to show that he was present. It was just he wasn't necessarily always physically present. And once he heard there was a need, he reacted. So since we're talking about the Hex a little bit, shall we talk about the socialist society in terms of how everybody had what they needed?
Yeah.
Some people wanted a bit more.
Sorry?
Some people still wanted a little bit more.
But I think that
makes us human.
Yeah. I think that's a natural reaction in a socialist society. Like I think it's important to make sure everybody has the basic needs met, but that there should. I like the fact that there was scope within that for people to have that little bit more if they chose.
Yeah, and I think with the talking about the whole design of the ship, they knew that was going to happen, so they designed the ship around the fact that people do want more. So let's try and make the ship as equal as possible for every single person, so that that's not part of that problem. So the ship itself isn't part of the problem.
Yeah.
So there's not like an outer ring where everyone gets windows and then the middle people get none. They kind of made it even.
It's not like a traditional cruise ship here where you get that kind of thing. Yeah. But I also think that society worked while they hadn't had contact with anyone else.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, it doesn't work once you realise there are opportunities to grow and have more, which is why economically I don't think the barter system, they really, sadly, should probably get more creds, as it were, or give options. I don't think the barter system has a long longevity, another generation down the track.
Well, one of my favourite parts about the whole thing of it was the Hex living structure in terms of the groups of families, and they take turns cooking, and I was just like, oh my god, that sounds brilliant.
Yeah, and
they basically created the village.
Yeah. And sometimes it worked really well, and sometimes it probably wasn't so fantastic.
No, you might ask for a move. I thought. The thing that I really wanted, and I don't know if anyone, I think Matt may, when Isabel was saying to, when Isabel was describing to, I cannot pronounce.
Gunaloan? I think on the audiobook they just called her Gunaloan.
Gunaloan.
There's no way I would have known how to say that.
No, I would not have said it anywhere near that.
The enthusiast, the enthusiastic Harvard. Everything's incredible and amazing.
Yes.
That animation that the children won, I was like, I want to see that. I want.
Yeah.
And I've been looking. I was like, you can't tell me no fan has created this. Maybe it's going to be up to me to do it. I don't know. But I love that. Like, it's just that honeycomb thing of saying you have the house, which is then built into your hex, which is then in a neighborhood, which is then in a, and then there's the decks. I couldn't work out, the only thing I couldn't work out is the farms, the agriculture and the fisheries, are they on different decks or are they on the same deck?
I'm not sure I really knew. I don't think I thought about it that hard.
I started to lose how it was set out near the end, and that was sort of near the end of the explanation. And I'm like, oh, can someone draw me?
I knew that the pipes was on the next level down, and I knew the transport was above. I don't quite know how that happened. I don't know if they had chutes or ramps.
One of the things I did like, though, about having the US cover was that it had a picture of one of the ships on the front, and it was really interesting to see what it looked like.
Really? Oh, yeah. That sounds really cool.
I mean, I don't know if it's an accurate depiction, but it looked pretty good. Especially seeing how the central core worked. Everybody's Googling now, aren't you?
Yeah, we are.
I just wanted to say the Harmasian was my favourite character in the book.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
They were awesome.
I remember I kept getting them confused with the Grum. I had to remind myself. Yeah. I was like, oh, that's right. There was a Harmasian in that was scooting around in a cart in the marketplace. I do remember. Like, it took me time to remember, but
it was really only when the cart thing came up in the story that I was like, oh yes, there's something different. That's right, they're not the same thing.
Yeah, it was like when they mentioned the cart, I'm like, oh, it's not a Grum. Okay, yeah. What is this again?
That is not how I imagined that the ships to look like.
That is not how I imagined it either.
Yeah, but I felt like it worked for me once because I read the description and then looked at the cover and went, oh, okay, I could see how that could work.
Okay. I do kind of get it. Yeah.
Especially for the core part, like the core bit makes more sense now.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I liked the kind of the hex idea as well because there's no weather, so you can have this central courtyard essentially that is a meeting point, a community, like the end of the street kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's lovely. I thought it was really nice.
And then those hexes, they're around a central, not a plaza, but they're around another central hub, right? There's another hub around that where they have some essential services, and I thought it was really interesting.
No, it's really good in that respects. All right, shall we talk about IS, I think.
IS, yep.
Well, thank you. IS, in terms of, I thought her isolation was interesting. She, poor thing, sounded so very lonely, and I was wondering how much of that might have been self-imposed because she was too dedicated to her job.
Well, we didn't really get to know much about any of the other caretakers and whether that's something that they all experience or if it was something a bit unique to her experience.
That's what I thought too, yeah.
I think the most insight we got into the rest of the caretakers, that was a very incestuous group.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is understandable if they're all, well, I'm assuming they're all treated in a similar way if that's what happens, because they don't feel like they can find a partner outside their own group because they're the only ones that really understand each other, don't revere each other.
Yeah. It certainly, that aspect that they were talking about tends to suggest that, yes, it was a common experience they all had.
Well, I mean, they don't really, in the story, they don't really sort of, there's nothing like her job in our society. Like, I suppose you could say something like a priest or some sort of, like, that sort of level is similar, but it's not the same. Like, if you are caring for a priest, it's because they mean something to you in a religious sense.
Yeah.
Whereas she is cared for by the community because of how she cares for them through birth and death in the community. Like, there's not really anything that's kind of equivalent in the world that we live in.
closest I got was like a mortician.
Yeah, but she's sort of
Yeah.
like an amalgamation of all the things that come with
Yeah.
honouring the dead. Like she's
Yeah.
all of those things.
Just
Yeah.
But
as
she
a-
certainly had more of the priest aspect as well. Sorry,
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, something
Sorry, I
more
was just
priest-like.
jump in and say on my mother's side of family back in my family tree, I have a line of headsmen, executioners.
Oh,
in my
wow.
family. And it's like to look at that, I would say that it was like a similarly close community where like the daughter of an executioner would marry another executioner. So I think like I don't feel like that sort of isolation of that group is like an unrealistic thing.
Oh no, I don't mean that it's unrealistic. I mean that the reverence that she feels from people, and because she doesn't feel isolated because, you know, her position makes her isolated like a mortician or a headsman. It's more of a that people hold her in such a revered status that she can never be just her. And I mean, she even said that in the story, that she feels like she can never just be herself.
Yes, which definitely puts her more in the priest aspect in terms
Yeah.
of.
You know, what it
So
makes me think of as an analogy for our society is celebrity.
Mm.
You know, like how many celebrities end up with other celebrities because, you know, it's hard for them to have a relationship with an ordinary person because they're like, you're this famous person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's kind of, people don't see them as themselves. They see them as this image of.
Yeah, they see them as the idol or the sort of picture that they are rather than the person that they actually are.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm in the process of destroying a book here.
What was that? Sorry.
Sorry if there's too much noise. I'm in the process of destroying a book.
Oh, okay. we might mute you on and off, yeah, because we can definitely hear it. But I think you're right about the priest analogy, Naomi. Because yes, today not so much, but in previous times, yes, because there are a lot of societies, communities, the church was the centre. It's where the archives happened. It's where births were celebrated. It's where deaths, you know, with the funeral rites. And if you were in the Catholic tradition, I think the Buddhist tradition and others, you know, you weren't allowed to marry. So it really was a lonely aspect without having friends who weren't within it. You know, the Vatican, I think, if I think about the Pope, I think that's how people think about the Pope. You're a symbol and you're revered. You're not thought of as a person. You know, this is within the Catholic community, of course. This isn't necessarily elsewhere, but you know, you're thought of as that you are your job, and the job is you. You did not have a life before that. You know.
Yeah. No, I agree. I would relate it mostly to Catholicism and Buddhist monks and things like that. Those two seem to have very similarities. So,
and I think and within Catholicism, nuns as well. People don't see nuns as being people who, you know, have thoughts, feelings, pasts. Opinions.
Well, in a lot of respects, what they sign up for in those roles is that they aren't individuals anymore, but they are.
That is true too. That is true too. I do understand that. However, I've listened to some really interesting interviews on the ABC where I think they've got a nun who comes on who's studying, and she's, you know, teaches and stuff. So it depends what your calling is, I think, within that.
Yeah, no, there's definitely room for personality within it. I just, the first call is to be the duty of God, sort of thing. So
I was going to say, with the Aya stuff, could we touch upon Sunny?
That's exactly where I was going. Which was, well, first of all, Sunny, but also the whole concept of the sex work, standardized and protected.
Tryst clubs. Yeah.
I thought that was an amazing example of how when you normalize sex and don't see it as something shameful, that you can then provide environments where those people who want to work in that industry can safely. And there was a lot of, I thought, really good choice in amongst, because he was protected, there was a lot of really good choice behind it. He didn't have to sleep with her just because he was requested or asked to or anything on those lines. He had choice.
And not just that, like, it's not just that there are sex workers there, but you can go there and say, I would like to meet a stranger. And you might have sex, you might just have a drink and then go home.
Exactly.
Like a host.
It's like a host club. Like
Yeah, and the tryst clubs, you can meet a person who's a professional, or you can meet someone who's like you. Yeah, what I loved about it, and I think is so refreshing, and it is this ability for all sexes, all genders, all what's what I'm looking for, all prolifications, is that the right word?
Tastes.
Like tastes, but it to be like to enable that idea of I can just go out and have a good time and not get hung up within my own thing about this needing to be more than it is. I just like I was like with Iris, I was like, oh man, I wish I could have been like, I wish I could have had that attitude, you know.
Yeah.
I just found that so refreshing, that sort of.
I even loved the whole when she turned up and like everything, her tastes and everything were just on file. And yes, there was room for her to express for if there was something different that she would like this time round, but everything was just there on file. And they were like, we'll take care of you. It's all easy.
Yeah.
What I thought was interesting was like that concept of like, they've thought that, you know, this is something that humans are going to need. Like, not even romantically, just like people are going to need to get laid to avoid going insane in space. So this is a service that needs to be provided. But at what point did they realise that? Because I'm sure that when they were building the fleet on Earth, unless we're like progressed societally beyond that at the time, they may well have still had similar attitudes to sex and you know that we have now. Like, I don't know how far down the track they were in the story when they were sort of like, okay, we've got to get off Earth because it's fucked up.
Yeah.
They did talk about the fact that they're making the ships took more than a generation. Like that the people who started building them were not going to be able to be on them.
So there's that period of time that it took them to, but between say now and when they decide we've got to build that ship, so we're talking like 50 years, 100 years, 200 years. Because I'm just trying to think, at what point did the general society's attitudes to sex, that people who, the generation of people on the ships, were okay with that?
I'm just going to hope that it happens sooner rather than later.
We're hoping before the ship was built, but yeah, that isn't interesting.
It may not have, because I also got the sense that they made a conscious decision for those who made it aboard the fleet, that you were leaving culture, religion, you were starting a new thing, and anything that you had previously, the way you got the way you received a surname, it was all left behind. And I do think, though, and this is just a thought when someone made a comment, is like, prostitution is the world's oddest profession. It was going to happen whether they regulated it or not. But yeah, the interesting point is it because it was happening, they were like, okay, let's make this part of our new attitude, or what already, regulated and seen in a much more healthier light. Who knows? But I think it was a really refreshing thing. And I did love the scene where Kip and Raz got caught.
I knew
I was just like, you're being dealt sugary drinks.
What was the drink called? There was something the drinks were called, and I was like, oh, you guys are so
tropical.
Yeah.
I had one problem with that scene.
Orange juice and lemonade.
I had one problem with that scene, and that was that they had to be 20. And I was like, you can tell that this has been written by an American, I feel, because I was like, I'm pretty sure in almost any other culture, in other Western cultures, UK, Australia, Canada, and things like that, it would have been 18.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I was going to say that I would hope to think that the sort of way that sex was thought of may have changed while they were building the ships, not that generation that died out, but that generation that was like stuck on the planet but unable to go outside. like because they had trashed the planet so heavily, just working so hard to like get everything built to get everyone off the planet. I feel like the people who were last to leave, who are the people who are still in fleet, are the people who, like, they would have been like, why do we care that, you know? Because I feel like the way they described people like the Martians, who are people who moved from Earth sort of very early, seem a lot more Earth human than the guys on fleet do. Like, I know we don't get a lot of like first-hand experience from them, but that's the sort of thought I was getting. I don't know.
I'm leaning towards the fact that it happened earlier because it was so well organized, and I think if it had grown up kind of organically and then they tried to pull it in, it wouldn't be so organized. Like, there'd be kind of like still some going on that wasn't regulated and stuff, whereas if they sort of started it from the beginning of here's what it's going to be, I don't know.
It just seems so good, like so well organized. Even just how they caught Kip and Raz, it was just like.
Oh, I thought that was so funny.
But it was also paid for with creds. I mean, I don't know what you barter for things like that. Like,
I suppose anything.
Was it paid for with creds? I just felt like it was just a service that was provided.
I thought it was offered because they literally say it's a public service.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought no, because Raz said, we need enough creds to get in. I've been saving them up.
No, he's
no, that was for the chip to the fake ID, basically. But
okay.
But I kind of I was a bit confused about how that worked because I got the impression that was. But then he was talking about, well, this is my job, and it's like, how cool is my job? I'm sitting here drinking with you in this, and I'm actually on the clock. And I was kind of like, how does that actually?
Well,
I wasn't sure how.
I suppose it's like anything else. It's the job that
no one gets paid for anything. Or the
Every,
job. Yeah, people don't get paid for their jobs.
It's what they do to give back. Yeah.
Yeah, and people didn't have to get a job; they'd still get food and stuff. But
I also like the fact that, despite the fact that Es and Sunny obviously had a strong relationship, it wasn't really moved into a romantic relationship before the end. It was just a friendship.
Yeah.
Friends with benefits.
Yep.
Under strictly supervised times.
No, I like that too. I thought it was so refreshing to have that kind of situation where it's like you guys have gained real mutual respect for each other and developed a friendship, but you don't need it to be anything more than it is.
Yeah. Did you notice that she didn't put any relationships that were already established as romantic? She didn't start any new ones?
I appreciate that.
It was an interesting one because I think that would be a fairly normal thing that people.
Except Grandpa.
You're right. But if you
didn't meet his girlfriend.
Yeah, we didn't meet his other half.
Let's be honest, we got a lot of romantic stuff happening in the first one. There was a lot going on. Like everybody, like there was AI and human, and there was Andrisk and human, and there was stuff happening.
Human and Aeon and
Yep.
Was there a Laru on the in the first one? Because I was like,
I don't think so. Not.
We meet the Laru?
I don't know. I reckon we did, but I reckon it was either like when they were on World or something.
I just imagine this alpaca.
Yeah, so do I. I imagine like alpaca crossed with the Muppet.
Yeah, like shaggy, gold, yellow fur. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm kind of like. Yeah, on like a string. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I know there must have been one in one of the other books, maybe just on World or something, because he just like it didn't surprise me. I was like, I've heard of this creature before. But
and then I read it. I was like, oh yeah, there they are. They're in my mental Rolodex. Here's the image I have for them. Yeah.
All right. I only have one other note. So we have actually gone through everything, and that was literally Ras with a very sneery look for an emoji and peer pressure.
The part I loved about that storyline was him ditching him at the end, where Kip was like, I'm just not even going to reply to you anymore. And I was like, that's so,
like the fact that he did it over what was the most important thing, that Ras was unwilling to report such an important thing and unwilling to engage in a discussion.
And yet then when it was reported, he started bragging about
Yeah.
Yeah.
That he annoyed him, and that would have annoyed me.
Yeah.
Fine, you don't want to be that guy, fine, but don't then act like it's all you. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and not just that it was all him. He was like embellishing the story and making out like I can't remember what he said. There was something he said that it was like, well, that's not how it happened at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like everybody in a story. It would be interesting.
Oh, he said, oh, we overheard them bragging about how they'd killed this kid. And it's like, well, that's not what you overheard. You overheard them being like, holy shit, this thing happened and what the hell are we going to do now? Which is not the same as, oh, ha, ha, we killed this kid.
Yeah.
And I must admit, actually, I'm sorry, it's going back to Sawyer a little bit. I actually appreciated the fact that they didn't kill him.
No.
No.
It was like, holy shit, we didn't expect that he would do something like that.
Yeah.
But we don't want to cop shit for it, so now we're going to cover it up.
Well, I mean, if they'd been looked into and investigated, they would have discovered all of their illegal activities.
Yeah.
And so that's what they're trying to dodge more than anything. So
Yeah.
otherwise they wouldn't have bothered bringing the body back, I assume.
Yeah, that's all. They did say that when they were having the discussion. They couldn't leave the body there because the Neptune would find him. Because of the space tech they had from the aliens, they helped them find all bodies, and then they couldn't punch through, use the pinhole drive again because it was too dangerous. So it was basically their like last resort.
Because he was registered going onto the vessel, wasn't he?
I don't think so. No.
Right. So I'm just wondering why they didn't just leave the body in space.
That's what I thought too.
I think it's they were going. They couldn't use the pinhole drive again. I'm guessing that maybe because of the tech they have on the ship, that if they just dropped him off somewhere, someone would have found him and worked it out from their flight.
But then what's that different? Oh, yeah. But I suppose then what's different about leaving him in the laundry part? Oh, no, because then they said by the time they get found, we'll be away.
They'll be gone.
They knew he was trackable. They knew that he could be tracked. They were just trying to make it as hard as possible. But they knew.
And they took the chip thing out.
And then they tried
the only reason they knew he was is because of
because the caretaker IS who recognised him. Yeah,
recognised him when they brought him in.
Like when they found him and they knew that he had no family there, and they knew, like, they probably assumed that no one would miss him, so no one would be able to identify him. It was just they're just lucky or unlucky for them.
See, I read it as more of that despite the fact that they were doing something illegal, it didn't make them bad people per se, like as in evil people. And so they wanted to bring him back to the fleet. They just, I don't know, they couldn't just dump him in space. But that's how I read it. And that's the last of my notes. Anybody got anything else?
I highlighted this bit just briefly, made me giggle. So this is Iris when she was talking about going to tryst clubs and why she goes off-world and that kind of thing, and she doesn't like talking about what she does. Nobody would start crying when she took her pants off. She knew the crying hadn't been in response to her lack of pants, but still.
Yeah, that was good.
It made me laugh. Yeah, I like that.
It could that would definitely give you a bit of a phobia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it certainly ruined the mood anyway.
Absolutely.
I assume you all talked about Kip already.
No, we haven't actually kind of.
Not directly, but we talked about him so many times through other people. I didn't really worry about it, but yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say it wasn't my favourite character, but that was my favourite character arc.
Oh, God. Why did everyone like Kip? I wanted to.
No, I said I didn't like Kip.
You didn't like Kip? Yeah.
It's not his favourite character, he said, but he liked the arc.
I like his journey from where he started up. I thought that was the best character arc of anyone. He had the most change for me.
Yeah, he did.
From where and it resonated with me a bit because I'm constantly thinking about, like, reading stories about, kids who seem normal all the way and then just something happens and they go down the wrong path, and I'm just like, how? I don't want.
He sort of went the other way. He was on he started getting on the wrong path and ended up on the right path. Yeah,
that's right.
I feel like that was helped a lot by his connection with Isabel. Like the events that happened with Sawyer helped, but also the Isabel connection I thought helped to pull him into line.
But also, I think that is like his parents, and he said that like that instilled good values in him, and yes, he was bored, but they wanted the best for him, and that whatever they had brought him up and instilled in him, that was the reason why he wanted to go to the funeral, why he felt it wasn't right that he was there. So and then he met others that kind of, like, he met Ias, and he met Isabel, and he met Tamsin, and he was like, what I'm feeling is the right way to be feeling. This is, this is a good thing. So I thought that was really, really cool. But yeah, the whole time with Raz, I was like, it's like Sawyer and the bloody oats and the outside the workplace. It's just like
it's trying to take advantage of you.
Yeah.
Really?
I know the whole time he's like, well, have you tried it? Well, no. Well, it's like, and I thought she wrote the whole, I don't know, is it called Smash?
Yep.
Yeah. She wrote that so well. Like it was, sorry? Okay.
I think it was the alcohol.
Kick's alcohol and Smash was the weed.
Smack. I would say.
But Kick is also specifically like moonshine, right? It's
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
I was like, so there's a Kick and a Smash. Which one's which?
Yeah. And Mech, which I think is probably closer to marijuana, but a lot milder.
I always thought Mech was off.
Mech's the coffee.
Coffee, yeah.
I thought that too, but they talk about the effects, and some won't drink it on the job.
But that was literally
it was more than coffee, but it wasn't. Yeah, because even Isabel drank it. Like heaps of people drank it, so it's like more than coffee.
Didn't they explain this in the first book? Wasn't it? Am I getting this confused with another?
No,
they did have Mech on the first one.
They loved it. They drank a lot of Mech.
But there was a lot of tea too.
Yeah.
Mel remembers the tea.
And that was a deliberate double entendre.
And there were biscuits.
Well, is it a double entendre if it's not sex? No, but I was hinting to something else. Pun.
There were biscuits, and I was excited by the biscuits, and then I realised, well, maybe they weren't biscuits, they were scones, and I'm just getting confused.
Yeah, I thought they probably were scones.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, he showed up with tea and biscuits. Oh, that's a good man. And then I was like, it's a scone.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it is American, so they probably were scones.
Yeah.
It's American.
And it was something about the ingredients they mentioned, and I was like, I have a feeling they're talking about scones.
Oh, that was something I was going to mention earlier. There's a real wiping of other cultures, which could possibly be read as whitewashing in the whole book. And I was wondering if anybody had heard anything from other cultures, i.e. Black, Indian, things like that, that had a problem with this story.
There was a mention of a character, and they talked about skin color, and they kind of talked about how they'd been on the ship so long that everybody was kind of blended together.
Well, they mentioned that in book one. That's what they did away with. They did away with.
But that's exactly what I think. Like, if I was somebody who came from those other cultures, I probably might have a problem with that.
But one of the children was described as have like she
brown
said
feet.
it pressed against the glass and his little brown feet.
Yeah,
I'm not saying
I think you're talking more about culture rather than skin color.
Yeah, I know there's other people with different skin tones and things like that, but they don't present any other cultures. It's very much a homogenized culture, and I was wondering
of the fleet.
Yeah.
I would expect that it would be a homogenized culture in the
Otherwise,
fleet.
you end up with us.
I'm sorry, but if we've destroyed the planet, culture.
Yeah, they're probably would be.
I agree. Culture and religion go suck a big one. The thing that I did think was interesting, though, and we're talking about the biscuits and the scones, was the food. So there was a lot of eating of crickets and things. That's from African culture, and from Asian culture they eat a lot of insects. The bean cakes, I was very much imagining those Chinatown treats you get,
Yeah.
So,
with like the red bean paste in the middle.
Yeah, and the stuff with the pickle, and there was things that sounded like it was hot and spicy, like it might have
A lot of hot and spicy.
A lot of hot and spicy.
How
So
do we make bugs
in
taste?
some ways, I felt like the cultures were coming through in the foods, but that might have just been me. I mean, I am white, and I don't necessarily know.
And it is the easiest way to kind of start with somebody else's culture, isn't it? Like, I don't know, maybe it's just because I like to eat, but it's kind of the first thing I notice about another culture is what kind of food do these people have? 'Cause
And
I like
actually,
food.
the Ptarmigan, someone said
Ptarmigan.
they talk. She talks about it as well, about wanting to try different foods and not being able to stomach things. And they talk about the mech and the temperatures. So even with the other sentients, they talk about food being a big thing. Like I think the reason they had the coast bugs, red coast bugs, is because they were from somewhere else, right? I remember learning about that in the first one, that they found them and now they're farmed everywhere in the universe.
All right. Does anybody have anything else?
I would have liked more description of what kind of, like, what the bugs were that they were using as food. Like, were they smaller bugs, like the size of like grasshoppers, or had they found like really large bugs that were from, you know, other planets? Like, I would have just liked to know, like, when they say bugs, do they mean insects the way they are insects on Earth, or do they mean something that is a bug on another planet?
I do specifically mention grasshoppers at one point, so I kind of just pictured grasshoppers the way they are on Earth, and crickets the way they are on Earth, because I figured they took them with them, and it's like easy to breed a whole bunch of insects, so it'll be easy to keep the food supply going.
Yeah, they're high in proteins
and stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that, Karina?
Yeah, but did they mutate them like we've done with chickens and stuff?
Oh, who knows?
Like chickens aren't actually the size that we make them.
No.
And not just that, but they keep talking about, or like, you know, more and more how people on the fleet want these exotic foods that are from different planets. Like, they don't just want plain bugs, they want bugs with fancy spices and, you know, different types of things. And I'd be interested to know, like, how many types of bugs have been brought into the fleet to be farmed that weren't stuff that we took with us from Earth. Like, are there many? Do they not really do that on the fleet, and it's just what's been brought in? Like, that's that kind of thing. I like, not necessarily needed to be told in this story, but it's something that I would be interested to know.
Basically, you're saying you want more books.
Like, even just a more in-depth, like,
she needs a fantastic beat somewhere to find them.
Yes.
Fantastic bugs and where they.
Some sort of encyclopedia.
Get some sort of encyclopedia sort of thing where I can go, okay, bug farming, how does it work? What you know, what do they use? What kind of things are used in different places? Like, do the bugs they use on Mars similar to the bugs they use on? Because they were talking on about outer planets, and I don't know if that means.
Yeah, there was the Jupiter station at least.
Do they all use similar sorts of bugs, or, you know, what are their dietary requirements, like diets like what kind of foods they all have? And that might be where some of the culture could come in, because obviously people who are in different places will create their own culture because they're in their own environment, like in a sort of centralized environment. So I'd be interested to see, like, do the people on the Jupiter station have, you know, more foods from like Central Asia or from Africa, or, you know, like, it would be interesting to see what fell out in that sort of environment, like, and what happened in different places. Like, that's the kind of information I would like. Did he just bite you? He bit me. Sorry, Bam just bit Karina on the
I was going to say, was that Bam?
It had to be Bam, surely.
That's good that it's Bam, because I heard Ben and I was like, what?
Yeah, we get that a lot.
Elizabeth, Bam is their cat, just so
One off,
yes.
I do know, Naomi, I remember the red coast bugs, and they were big, and I always imagined them as being more like big crabs or big Moreton Bay bugs or something like that.
They almost seem like big Moreton Bay bugs.
Big, like lobster sort of size.
Yeah,
like
they always look like this big or something.
Bugs. They could actually be bugs, you know, they could actually be insects that from another place, like you said. Like, I always imagine them being just like, you know, Moreton Bay bugs, or
they could be like bugs that are the size of a dog, you know, because if they breed like bugs, because, you know, bugs' life cycles are, you know, usually fairly short, and they have a lot of sort of babies in a single clutch. So even if they're that sort of size and they're having a similar sort of life cycle, you know, that would be a lot of food generated fairly quickly if it's a similar sort of like ratio.
I think it's more likely that there's some kind of sea bug though, because I believe that on land there's an actual
There is a size
a limit on what size the insects can be to do. I think it's to do with how they breathe.
And their exoskeletons?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Different gravity, we don't know.
Oh no, on Earth.
Oh, on Earth.
yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I mean just in general. But yeah, it would just, I'm interested to see, which is, like Sarah said, I need a Fantastic Beasts sort of book for this world. Like, I don't necessarily need a story. Like, I don't need a story that tells me about a farmer telling me about the bugs, but it would be interesting to have a book where I could go, okay, I want to know more about the bugs, open it up, you know, have pictures that have different sizes, comparing them to something I can picture, that sort of thing.
An appendix in the back of the book. And I would have liked an appendix with the different sentient races and reminding me which was which, because it's been a while since I read the other books and I'd forgotten.
Yeah, and several of us kept confusing the Grums and the Humgians, those ones.
You know what I pictured? I think it's because I watched Monsters Inc. with the kids the other day. But
Oh
with
yeah,
the
that's what I was basically
picturing-
imagining. Yeah,
Oh, of
but
Doris.
pink. Yeah, Doris. Yeah,
Is it
Doris,
Doris?
but just pink. I think it's
No,
Doris.
I kept
The number
imagining
one
that
on the
blobfish.
CG.
Yeah, a little bit blobfish, like colour of the
I was
blobfish.
imagining the blobfish, just but with eye stalks, and it was just like the way they with the moor and everything. Oh,
Or like a snail, like a slug without.
yeah, just a big blob of.
But the thing that I pictured, there was this,
God damn it.
there's a scene in Monsters Inc. where there's this monster that's just like slime, and he runs over the grate, and then he goes through the grate, and it's just the eyes. And when she got off the cart thing, and she was like, "No, I'll just walk."
Yeah.
And they had to like wet the ground, and everybody came with their water.
And the little girl
kind of what
who
was
just
going
threw
through
her cup on the ground.
Yeah.
Where is it?
That was such a good scene with the water on the ground and everything. They were lovely.
And
I
just
love that everyone was like, "Yeah, of course we'll bring."
It gives us some reasons to stand here and stare.
I mean, like, I don't feel like she felt uncomfortable about people staring, because that's kind of why she came. Like, she came to look at what humans were doing on the ships. So it was interesting to her that they would be interested in what she was doing on their ships.
I love how horrified she was when they were talking about like humans giving live birth.
Yeah.
She was like, "This is just horrifying."
You discard an organ?
Doesn't that hurt? Yeah.
I had to think for a second the discarded organ bit. I was like, what's going on? What are we talking about?
Yeah, an organ that you only have during pregnancy, and then you don't have it anymore.
It took me a second. What can I say? I haven't given birth.
So when I first heard it, I'm like, organ? What? Oh.
Yeah, that's basically what I did.
Yeah.
The discarded. I think it was the discarded organ bit that threw me, and until we got to until it was very clear that she was talking about pregnancy, then I was like, that's right, I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, because they didn't explain that she was talking about pregnancy from the beginning. She kind of was like, "What?" And then you kind of got into that discussion from that point. Yeah, that's probably why we were all like, "What are you talking about?" Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And you have to remember that the placenta is an organ.
Yeah, which you don't really.
The skin is an organ too. I never think of it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, true.
So you die without it. So.
Well,
And that's what I did at first. I was just like running through things. And I'm like, is she talking about skin? I mean, I know we discard skin, but is she talking about skin?
yeah, I suppose we do. We do skin.
Giving birth? No. I only had one other thought that I wanted to was this was a different style of book because it was 5
Parts.
It was five, wasn't it? 5 characters we were looking at.
Yes, there was other characters, but it was 5 main ones.
There was no overarching plot driving the story forward. It's just the story of these people and the events that happen following, the tragedy in the
Oxo.
Yeah. But there's no big plot pushing things forward. It's just like, what happens to these people? What happens to these people as they go about their stuff? And I think that's why it's my least favourite one for me, because even though I found those stories really interesting, I really wanted something bigger to tie, for those story threads to hang off of, rather than just them happening kind of thing.
I mean, I think,
as a story, I would have been more engaged, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you, because I definitely struggled in that respects as well. But I also feel like her other books were very similar in that respects, in that there was more plot in them than these ones did. But at the same time, it was still a very light on plot, and it was more about the, like, if you think about the first one, it was more about the daily events as they got to the planet than it was about the actual getting to the planet itself.
Yeah.
It's almost like I felt the end of the book was not a natural end. It was just like, that's where she's decided that all these stories are going to end here, but they didn't have to. There was not like.
But that's kind of nice in a way too.
Yeah, with a snapshot.
Because that's what life is like. We don't like go, okay. We don't
And
usually
happily
read
ever
about
after.
a character from birth till death, and then we don't in real life have these story arcs really where it's just stuff keeps happening and new things happen.
Yes,
and
but
things
you also
change
don't
and
like
there's no.
the things that are real life, like, you know, bad things happen to people all the time. You like happy endings, which is not always the case in real life. So
Yeah.
I think
But-
her titles have been really well chosen because they really tell you what the book is about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I thought about that at the end actually. I was like, wow, it really is what the title is saying. It is a record of a few people born in space. Like
Yep, that's definitely true.
and the long way to a small angry planet is really the long way part. It's about the journey. It's telling you in the title, it's about the journey. It's not about the destination.
And a close and common orbit. Just the fact that it was these people who were close to each other in terms of their interactions and how they were affecting each other and helping each other in their lives. It was about that community connection.
I have one last theme that I want to talk about. Can we talk about, I guess, how they take care of their dead and the dead are returned to the earth?
Can we have more of that, please? Let's do that. Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt. And I loved the funeral rites that are recited around that. And I just, it really moved me, and I loved everything around that. And when she talked about, because they never talked about until much later what happened to all of the deceased from the Oxo until later, when they said they sent them into the sun, and there was, because their culture had come up around this, you know, you are always going to be useful even in death. You then nourish the living. Like, this had become such a deeply ingrained part of the culture, you know, 10 generations on, that for that not to happen to your beloved is a really big fucking deal. And I completely understood. And, you know, I was like, wow, you know. And she said actually in her acknowledgements at the end, she did some study, and I was like, I'm up for that. You know, because my attitude towards my own disposal was always, I don't want to take up any room, because there isn't any room for dead bodies. I want to be cremated. But my problem with cremation is that it's not particularly environmentally friendly, you know, burning more things. I'm like, this is kind of cool. I didn't know there was an option. I don't know if we're culturally there yet for the composted materials to be utilized.
I would definitely choose it if I had an option.
I don't think the science is there yet either.
But I think the closest option would be to be buried, but not embalmed before you're buried.
Yeah.
Canberra has a green burial option now.
Oh, fantastic. So I'm coming to the SET as a corpse.
But I mean, that's going back to the whole very, everything in the ship.
Got a plane?
Sorry. Yeah, it is a plane. Sorry, we're very close to Archfield Airway. So there are lots of light planes that are in the area that fly very low.
Never realised that. We've lived here for a year.
Yeah, Archfield is just over there, so.
Yeah, I know that. I just never think about it. I'm just like, planes, I live in a city now.
But yeah, like it's the same sort of thing of if it's broken, you fix it. If you can't use it anymore, you break it down to its components so that you can use it for something else.
Yeah.
You don't keep anything for space. And it's that same sort of thing, like, you know, you keep using the same plate because it's not broken. Doesn't matter that it's been used for the last 5 generations. It's a plate that's not broken, so you keep using it. And that's the same with the dead. Like, they break them down so they can be used in a way in the ship, and they're not sitting on a shelf or being stuck somewhere. Like, that's just not how they use anything on the ship. It doesn't matter what it is. That's just not the way that they work it. Like, they don't keep things for the sake of keeping it, and they don't waste things if they don't have to, or if they can find a way to use it. Like, if there's a way to use something, they will use it.
Yeah. It certainly fits with their ethos.
Yeah, and I loved. I'm looking for the funeral rites because it just reminded me of Arthur C. Clarke. You know, It's Full of Stars. We're made of the stars. You know, that kind of thing.
It's something like they come from the stars, and then
we stood on the earth
and stood on the earth and returned to the ground.
I like the part with they talk about this hope. The stars are hope, and the now I need to see it too. Because there were 2 different ones. There was the one.
There was the naming.
I think the
one
I'm thinking is the naming one.
The naming one and the funeral one. Yeah.
Yeah, there's one I'm looking for it where, that's.
Oh, if you go right to the end, the funeral ones there because they get Kip to do the.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking for the one.
No, that's a naming.
No, that was the naming one.
No, that was a naming one.
Oh yeah. From the ground we stand, from our ships we live, by the stars we hope. That's the naming one.
Yeah, there's one.
I really like that.
I'm just looking for this. Oh, here it is. And this is the bit. Here we are. Here at the center of our lives, we carry our beloved dead. We honor their breath, which fills our lungs. We honor their blood, which fills our hearts, and we honor their bodies, which fuel our own. I think that's so beautiful. You know, when I first read that, I was just like, this is awesome. There's no religion to this whatsoever, but it actually makes complete science sense. You know, I loved that. And then the bit here. From death you took life, and from your death we now live. Here you will stay until we rejoin the stars once more. Oh, just this Becky Chambers has a way with words. It's just so beautiful. I really loved it, and
Actually, speaking of all of that, just reminded me of a tiny detail which I thought was a fantastic inclusion, and that was the Gaists.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, them. Oh yeah. Like,
it was just a passing comment that that there was an interest for a short period of time, sort of thing, by IS. But I was just like, that's so, like, she had so many of the different aspects of conservatism that you would expect there to be. You know, the age and conservatism, the not liking the aliens type conservatism, and that includes the humans that were coming back. But also the true traditionalists that think we have to go back to Earth, and that, like, she had all of those varieties of different conservatism that you would expect in this environment.
And even at the end when Isabel said, and I'd forgotten this, but then it brought back that first book to me when she said they put imperfect infants out to freeze.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and I'd forgotten that, but that's how we got what's his name, because his mother was a Geist, and then went, I can't do this. I know, I love this boy, and he may not be perfect, but he's perfect to me. I want to reread the first book again.
Yeah, I'm the same. Nye was reading the first book at the same time as me reading this one, and I was just like, kind of want to steal it off him so I can read it.
I like the little there's like, it's just like a throwaway line kind of thing, but where she's talking about, Ashby, he had one of those AIs on his ship or something, and he got really upset when something went wrong. I don't understand.
Yeah, you think it was a pet or something?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I feel like, because like you were saying, that you can't have a pet in their society just because there's no resources to sustain one, and AI is the kind of pet that you could have that uses a lot less like resources. Like, especially if it's an AI that's helping to control your ship. It's something you need. So it having some sort of personality gives you that sort of pet-like,
I think
a companion without actually having a pet that uses resources.
Isn't that what's her name?
The closed in common orbit,
Yeah.
they have, Blue first gives her a pet bot, and then she gets some
creates
more
a cafe with a pet
to
bot,
create
right?
the cafe. But yeah, Blue first makes her a pet bot, so she
That's
has something.
Has company.
with
Yeah.
her,
Yeah, but it
has
makes
something.
sense they don't have that on the colony ships because
Yes.
they had a lack of materials to be able to make them
Yeah.
from.
It was
If they came from anywhere, they'd be from trade,
Yeah.
like from
Yeah.
people coming in. Yeah.
Like them bringing, because they're talking about bringing in the program AIs to take over people's jobs in things like the factories, which is not surprising because that seems like the first kind of AIs they would bring in, something that didn't need extra materials to sustain themselves. Like they're just going to be in a computer that they probably already have. They just need like maybe extra memory or extra, like they might need something small extra, but they don't need a whole extra like body.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you guys like the movie theater?
I think
Yeah, I
it was
did.
essential.
What was that? Sorry.
I thought it was essential.
Yes.
Yeah. There was a line, I actually highlighted it because I thought this shows how there was kind of an like this understanding from the archives of what movie theaters were for, yet what the movie theater was showing was there was a disconnect from the ways people were supposed to be feeling. So this is Iris. She says her primary reasoning for loving the theatre was selfish, and she knew it. She could have cited tradition and culture, and no one had questioned her, given that her work embodied the same. But no, Iris was glad to have a functional theatre nearby because it was one of the few places she could just think. Because of what they show, which is scenes of nature, that is what we do. We go into nature to think.
Yeah.
So she feels like it's selfish, but actually, because, theatres were for entertainment and tradition, but actually what she's doing is no less selfish or wrong than what the original humans were doing in those environments. I just thought it was so interesting that because she's away from the environment, that isn't what she thinks. She thinks that's a wrong thing to be doing or a selfish thing to be doing. And interestingly, there's that bit with Tessa and going down to the cupola to see the stars, and that's her place because she's in her view. She's with her nature. So I just thought it's cool. And I love that because I'm someone who I use a lot of apps with noise, like listening to rainstorms or meadows in spring and mountain streams, because the sound of it is found it very relaxing, either to help me think or not to think at all.
Yes.
So
I need them for going to sleep. So.
Or for focus. It's often me blocking out everybody else.
I have a really great fan that just gives me white noise, which is great now.
Actually, I haven't listened to white noise since you got that fan, so yeah, it's pretty good.
That's what both me and my cousin used to always sleep with the fan on. My cousin used to always sleep like it could be the dead of winter. He had to have his fan on to sleep. And I remember when I was little, my grandmother gave me like a cassette tape. I was that little of just like forest bird noises sort of things, and I used to go to sleep to that instead of the fan going around.
Yeah. We used to have Luna go to sleep with an old iPhone playing like one of these apps, and it would be like a rainstorm.
That's what we did with our kids too.
Yeah. And it's really funny because tonight it's been raining and she fell asleep like that. Just like we're like Kevin's brought her home in the pram and he's had the cover on, and it's been raining on the cover, and we're like, why is she asleep? It's because it's like her cue.
It's conditioning. You've conditioned her.
Yeah, exactly. Although
May I just say, going off topic since 2012.
Yes, indeed.
Wait, it has been well over an hour and a half, so
yeah, we've been on topic
pretty
very
well.
well. Yeah, we've done extremely well.
We did extremely well, but I knew it couldn't last forever. Nothing
no, nothing does. Speaking of, I'm actually going to wrap it up here, even if we do bring up anything else. So anybody who's watching, thanks for joining us. Bye.
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 Bye.